what's up, guys? Alex Baker here with Awesemo.com, and joined today by a very special guest, Neil Orfield. You've probably seen him on DraftKings and FanDuel, NC Orfield 8K. And Neil, you had a huge takedown on Sunday. I mean, living the DFS dream, $1 million winner in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. So Neil, how you doing, man?
You know, just like any other week. I'm still pretty through the roof. Pretty like you said, it's living the DFS dream. I never really saw myself winning $1 million, so it's pretty excited still. A couple days later.
I can tell you from personal experience, it's not easy. I'm sure you've entered a lot of these before. I'm still trying to chase my first one.
Yeah.
And you beat out 222,000 people to come out on top in this tournament. So really, you had to have almost like a perfect lineup, and you did. So.
No, actually, Alex, I would have lost in the $3.
No way. Someone had it. Okay, so if you're watching, make sure you enter all your lineups in your Millionaire Maker, so you don't get FOMO. But 279 points with 200s to boot. So you had the Russell Wilson stack. You had him with Tyler Lockett, and then you ran it back with DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. And this was a really interesting scenario because it was the Sunday night game, which is usually not included in the slate. And because of COVID, the timing got switched around, but DraftKings kept the game on the slate. And that was really cool. So first of all, you went with the one wide receiver and one wide receiver from the opposing team. So is that something you're specifically targeting?
No, not necessarily. Different weeks I set rules differently. But this week in particular, I just set the rule to one pass catcher with my quarterbacks, and then I figured, I can allow for more, but I don't limit it to one. That's just kind of my starting point, and then I kind of whittle it down from, I want to have at least one pass catcher and one run back. But
nice, man, very solid. I mean, we've seen the run back with your quarterback take it down most weeks this year. So that's definitely been the winning strategy. And you had several low-owned players here. Deontay Johnson, he had been questionable going into the week, so his ownership was down, but really getting a lot of targets before that. Harrison Bryant, he had that news about him early in the morning that he was starting over David Njoku. And was it that news that got you onto Harrison Bryant at 2.8% ownership?
Yeah, I mean, it was the news combined with the matchup combined with the projected ownership. So, I saw in Fantasy Crunch that you had him projected for around what he ended up at, super low in a matchup against Cincinnati. And so before the week even started, in my dummy lineup, I had the tight end. I'm blanking on his name, the Cleveland tight end who starts usually.
Hooper.
Yeah, I had Austin Hooper in there. But then when he was out, I kind of was thinking David Njoku. So I switched him into my dummy lineups. But then with the news that Njoku was not going to start and it was going to be Bryant instead, I looked at, like I said, I looked at your ownership projections, and I was kind of wondering, has Alex not updated this yet? Are people really not going to jump on this guy at 2,500? But it was spot on. And so I boosted the projection that I had for Bryant because I knew I wanted to get above the field. I probably went a little bit overboard of what I needed, but, no complaints.
Nice, man. Yeah, I mean, it really worked out, and it was a good read. And I think with the ownership, a lot of times when there's late news like this, a lot of people have locked in their lineups already. I know I'm making a lot of my lineups well in advance of an hour and a half before lock. So that came out about an hour before lock, and obviously you're ready to adapt to that. So that was a huge difference maker. And Devonta Adams, he had a huge week. Not too hard to predict. 23% of the people had him. Jamal Williams, he was a great play with Aaron Jones out. And then the big fade of your lineup was Alvin Kamara without Michael Thomas. So was that something that you didn't have as much of him as everyone else, or was it just this particular lineup?
No, just this particular lineup. I was over the field on Kamara. He just projected so well that I definitely had a ton of Kamara. Luckily, not in this lineup. But yeah, I typically, maybe we want to talk about my process later. But I typically don't whittle down. I don't cut down players' projections too much from where you have them. I usually add to players that I want to get more of. But yeah, Kamara was just based on the projections. He was a great play. And he ended up with 22 points or something like that. So it didn't end up being a bad play. It just wasn't in the optimal.
Yeah. I think it just shows that diversifying, like even if you really like a player, if you have lineups without some of the stronger plays, it can pay off huge. So I'm curious about your experiences with DFS, like how long you've been playing. You're in a lot of these tournaments and you multi-entered this one a number of times. So how have you kind of evolved from when you started playing DFS to now?
So I started playing DFS in 2003. My younger brother invited me over to watch the Timberwolves game, and I, at that time, didn't care about basketball. It's now my favorite sport, and I'm a huge Timberwolves fan. But at that time, I was like, I don't really care about this game, but I want to come hang out. So I joined a few FanDuel lineups and got crushed. But for a little while, I thought I was going to be okay. And it kind of, I loved it. So I kept playing the rest of that season. And I think I started doing football that fall. So yeah, I've been playing since 2013. And early on, I would just read about the best plays and probably didn't, know all of the correlations that you really need to pay attention to. I think I picked up on quarterback and a pass catcher immediately, but there's obviously a lot more to it. In recent years, I spend a lot of time, watching, listening to podcasts about strategy and, along with plays as well. But so I've been doing it a while, and my process has definitely evolved and continues to evolve.
It's awesome, man. Well, you've officially hit the peak of DFS with this Millionaire takedown. So whatever you've been doing since you started in 2013 has really paid off, and that's got to feel good. Let's talk about Sunday night, because first of all, it was very unique that you got a Sunday night game that you had the sweat. Right. And because you had a big stack from this game, did you know going into this game that you had a potential winner on your hands?
So I knew going into this game that I had a potential great lineup. I did not know that it was this one. I was in third place in the Wildcat going into the Sunday night game, which would have been $75,000. And I tweeted about it before the game. I said, this game, I don't want this game to be a shootout. Obviously, no one was going to be a shootout. Just need no touchdowns in the Arizona-Seattle game. I was very much rooting against everything that ended up interest for the first half. I am checking my lineups constantly, seeing where I'm at. For this particular game, I didn't actually check until halftime of the Sunday night game, because I knew that I was sweating the wild card and the Wildcat. So I knew, for that particular contest, I knew what my rooting interests were, and that's what I was paying attention to. At halftime, I just happened to think, I should probably check the rest of my lineups. Look, and my money's gone up in the Millie Maker. So I look at why that is, and I was in 48th place at the time with 3 players remaining. Nobody ahead of me had more than 1 player remaining, and I was 18 points out of first. So at that point, I was like, oh man, this is live. I've got a real shot here. And didn't actually watch the third quarter. I was busy doing other stuff. I was thinking about it the whole time. It was very much on my mind. So not watching it was tough, but nothing really went my way in the third quarter. So probably best that I didn't watch. I needed, I needed 18 points out of Hopkins and Russ, because everybody had Lockett ahead of me. And they, I think, put up 5 points combined in the third quarter. And I told my wife, at halftime, I think I have a lineup that could be good. We don't usually do the sweats together. It's usually just me, and I tell her later how I did. This particular one, I told her we watched the fourth quarter, and I was, stressed. I was pacing around the room. She was telling me, it's okay. It's not your money. Don't worry about money that you don't have. Anything you win is good. And I'm sitting there like, man, I've got a real shot here, and it's not looking good for me right now. So it was intense. And then I think it was about 6 minutes left. Russ threw a touchdown. So at that point, I was talking with guys in the Awesemo Slack chat, and somebody pointed out that I just needed a 6-yard catch to get the 100-point bonus plus the point for the catch plus the yards, and that would put me in first place. So at that point, I just needed the Hopkins touchdown, or the Hopkins one single catch for 6 yards, and that would put me over. And it didn't happen. And I mean, game went to overtime. It was stressful.
Yeah, I mean, you must have been really sweating that field goal by the Cardinals. Because, I mean,
3 of them.
Yeah, so it wasn't guaranteed that game would go to overtime. And then once it did, I mean, you needed Russell Wilson to get a few points or Hopkins. And it wasn't happening initially, if I recall correctly. I mean, the overtime just kind of went on and nothing was happening. So at what point did you think you were going to win?
When he got the catch was the first time. I mean, it was really just not, I couldn't believe it. I was, just needed the one catch, and they feed Hopkins the ball all game, every game. And I was just like, this is going to happen, right? Like you're going to throw to him. And it looked like he wasn't even looking his way. He was throwing at Larry Fitzgerald and Chase Edmonds, and he was not even thinking he forgot about Hopkins, I guess, for a while. So yeah, I definitely was not confident until he finally caught the ball. And I was also, so at one point I was fluctuating from second to fourth. So I was this close to $1 million, but also every time Kyler Murray did something, people would jump me, and I would drop from 150,000 to 50,000. The troubles at the top, I guess, where structure is just so steep. But
definitely, yeah. I mean, that definitely adds a lot of stress when the money is changing so much, so frequently. And Kyler Murray had a great game, so having Russ, it must have been a little bit of a rooting against Kyler, but also hoping he throws the Hopkins. So that sounds conflicting.
It was very conflicting.
Awesome,
there was just so many chances for the game to end, with the field goal that he made to send it to overtime, and then he had a field goal that he missed in overtime that would have ended it. And then again, he ended up with a field goal to win the game at the end. Probably wouldn't have mattered anyway, but I was on pins and needles, so felt important to me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, never has sweating field goals been that exciting. So after you won, I mean, I saw a lot of people talking about one play that happened way earlier in the day that Todd Gurley, he scored a game-losing touchdown versus the Detroit Lions. And I think Todd Gurley was a really interesting play on Sunday's slate, because a lot of people were on the Falcons pass catchers or on the Detroit Lions receivers. So going for Atlanta rushing made a nice little pivot there. But Atlanta, they could have won the game if they ran down the clock and hit a field goal. But Todd Gurley accidentally scored a touchdown, which caused them to lose when the Detroit Lions had their last drive. So, I mean, obviously you didn't know how important that would be. And what does it feel like now?
I mean, it feels amazing. It's just, it's so funny to win $1 million and know that because a player accidentally scored a touchdown, losing his team the game. I said this on Twitter. It would have been more fun, I think, if that had been the last game. And to feel like I was completely out of it, like they're obviously not going to rush for a touchdown here and then have him do it accidentally, would have been pretty amazing. But I still, obviously I'm enjoying that bit of misfortune for Todd Gurley.
It worked out well for you. And I see you got that picture behind you there. So is that to commemorate that play?
Yeah, I got to thank Lofty for the picture. I posted a different picture, and then he sent me one with the Detroit players calling for the touchdown, which I really enjoyed. Seeing the opposing team cheering for the touchdown.
That's awesome, man. So that one play, I mean, in retrospect, was pretty amazing. Well, let's talk about how you came up with the lineup. So I know with NFL, you get a whole week to prepare. So at what point do you start researching for the games that week, and what do you do?
So for most of the week, I don't do a ton of research. I listen to podcasts just kind of like in the background while I'm doing the dishes or other stuff. But my research doesn't really get too intense until Sunday, just because that's when the injury news. That's when a lot of stuff comes out on Sunday that really shapes the slate. So I am listening. I listen to a lot of Awesemo podcasts throughout the week, but I have it in the background for the most part. It's not something that I'm really thinking about. I'm not thinking about. It puts plays in my head. It makes me think about the games themselves, and I can kind of come up with players that I want to focus on oftentimes during the week. But it's not something that I really spend a ton of time on until Sunday morning, just because so much can change so quickly. So yeah, I usually sleep in a little bit, but Sunday morning's the one morning that I actually wake up early to start my NFL research. And past Sunday, actually, you guys were on live earlier at Awesemo, and I joined that right away. I was listening all morning as I was setting my lineups. So that's a big part of my process. Sometimes I might do a crunch the day before, just like put lineups in so that I don't have a train on FanDuel or DraftKings. But yeah, I definitely adjust a lot throughout Sunday, trying to get the players that I want in the amounts that I want.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think Sunday, as you're saying, you just have so much more information about who the good plays are that day. And we had that late news with Harrison Bryant getting this start. That really was a difference maker for you. So that really shows that if you take the time right before the game start to finalize your lineups, you can get a big advantage through that. And I also, I like listening to a lot of podcasts throughout the week, and it just helps you kind of get a sense of what other people are thinking, and they make all these arguments, and it's like either agree or disagree. It helps you kind of figure out your center for Sunday. So I think that's a really good process. Now, once you get down to business, what tools and resources are you usually leveraging when you're building lineups?
So I use Fantasy Cruncher, and I use your projections. I know a lot of your tout make their own projections, and maybe there's some benefit to having unique projections. But so I use your projections as a base, I should say, and then I adjust a little bit according to where I want to get different, because I assume your projections are going to be like the most likely outcomes. And I sometimes want to have individual plays that I want to focus on, that I want to get different, because I know, in part because I know a lot of other people are also using your projections. And so they're going to get a lot of the same players that I am. So I want to at least differentiate myself slightly from that part of the field. So I mentioned earlier, I think that, so I rarely move players' projections down too much, because I recognize that, I'm using the best projections in the business. But I will increase projections of some players where I'm not getting enough of them. So like I'll run a crunch and see the percentages that I get, and I'll run a crunch and then I'll cut it down and see the kind of percentages I'll get for each player. And then I will change incrementally. I'll change the projections that I have on some players to get more or less based on where I want to end up.
That's awesome, man. So it sounds like you kind of have in your head an idea of what kind of exposure you want to different players. So you build lineups and then you kind of tweak it so that you get the players that you want in that exposure rate that you'd like as well. And I think that really paid off, that diversification, because as you're saying, you had a lot of Kamara. He was one of the best plays of the week. and not having him in this lineup ended up being a huge difference maker just because Gurley is so much cheaper. That allowed you to get that Seattle stack, which was quite expensive this Sunday. So you mentioned that you cut down the lineups. So is that because, when you generate lineups in Fantasy Cruncher, like sometimes if you use a lot of randomness and stuff, some of them aren't maybe ones you'd want to use. So what do you do? What are you looking for in the lineups that you end up selecting in that?
So I crunch maybe 3 or 4 times the number of lineups that I actually have. And then I cut down from there. And I usually just cut off at least the bottom quarter right away. And from there, I will look at if I have way more of one quarterback than I want, I will cut down, the bottom X number from that quarterback, or, I'll look at individual players that I have too much of or too little of. And if I have too little of that player, I will make sure that I don't cut out those lineups. So I'll uncheck them from the group that I'm going to delete. And if I have too much of a player, then I will, click on that player's group itself, and from there find lineups that I don't want in that group if they're correlations I don't like, or if it just doesn't project that well. So I crunch a bigger number and then I cut down just based on essentially how much I want of different players. I don't actually look at, in theory, I'd like to be looking at each lineup individually. So it's funny hearing people talk about this lineup and, what was his thought process. And I didn't know I had this lineup until it was halftime of the last game of the day. I don't know specifically exact lineups except for maybe like the hand-built lineup that I always start with and leave in there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think curating that list down to execute a strategy that you have in mind, and having like a diversified portfolio with, the plays that you want at a higher rate than, the field, and the ones that you don't like as much at not high exposure. That's definitely the best way to go about this. So I think everything you're saying makes a ton of sense. It worked out in the end, of course, and now you have $1 million in your DraftKings account. So, what are you planning to do now that you have this huge windfall?
So the boring answer is we're meeting with a financial advisor tomorrow. So we'll see how much of it I actually have left over to have fun with. We just moved into a new house a couple months ago. We had talked about, dreaming about if I ever won $1 million, would we move? And I think that we would come down to we're probably not going to move. But yeah, the fun stuff we'll do, we'll probably buy a new car. At least for me, I drive a 2003 Honda CR-V with over 200,000 miles on it currently. I worry it's going to break down every time I drive it, so I'll definitely be upgrading that. Probably upgrade my wife's car as well. Some stuff around the house. As far as like life changes, I don't have any immediate plans to quit my job. I guess it's nice that that's an option now, but I'm not immediately planning to go pro and do this full time. But it would be nice to have a little bit more time to actually focus on DFS. But I figure I can use your tools. You put in all the work for me for the most part, so appreciate that. And it saves me a lot of time having your projections at my disposal.
For sure, man. That's what I'm here for. But it was you that did all the work to execute this strategy that really paid off. And so a big question in DFS is the bankroll management. So now that you had this big win, are you going to play more on NFL Sundays? It sounds like you're being very thoughtful with how you're going to use this money.
Yeah, it's if I were a single man, I would probably be spending all my money every Sunday. I don't think that I'm going to be. I don't think my wife would approve of that. So probably not too much more than I played last Sunday. I'll play a fair amount. I'll probably max out at least the FanDuel, maybe the DraftKings Millie Makers. But I've been trying to focus more recently on not the Millie Makers because they have such a steep payout structure. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. I think there are better payout structures and better tournaments to play I'll probably start playing more and more smaller field tournaments. I think is going to become my focus now that I've lived the dream and it's unlikely to happen again. Maybe I won't max out the Millie Maker. Maybe I'll focus elsewhere. Time will tell, I guess. Maybe it depends on the week too, how much I like the games.
That's awesome. And yeah, that's funny that like now that you won the Millionaire Maker, you're like, I've done it already. You know, the thrill is gone. But yeah, Neil, congratulations, man.
Thanks, Alex.
I mean, this is what we all want to do as DFS players, is win $1 million in one day, and you did it, and you had a great strategy. So thanks for sharing your thoughts with us and the experience, and I hope everyone watching picked up a couple tidbits to chase this million this week. So guys, good luck.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me on.